Final hour overdrive continues. TSN 1050 now up on TSN 2. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Gord Miller. Got Andi Petrillo coming up here in a moment.
There you go.
Opening ceremony tomorrow.
Maybe she could host tomorrow.
She could, although she's busy tomorrow.
I got to host tomorrow.
Yeah, it's you and Frankie, right?
I got to try to put the thing in the ditch again.
Yeah, no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Everything's all good. I don't worry a second when you're in here.
No.
Or really when anyone is. Like the amount of people that will ask me when I'm off, who's hosting? I really, a lot of times, don't know. Like that's not my responsibility to book who's going to be filling in for me.
One of my favorite lines, Johnny Carson was so funny, right? And he had Bob Newhart on, the late Bob Newhart. And there's a clip circulating where he said, you've guest hosted, right? He goes, yeah, like 30 times. I guess you didn't watch.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not from a standpoint of not watching. It's that like before the show, who's filling in for you next week? I'm like, half the time I know, half the time I don't know.
I will say
that's not my job.
I will say guest hosting for you is a little difficult this year because you keep changing your schedule.
Yeah, the schedule changes a lot in the summertime.
Right.
From Labor Day through July 1st, very consistent. You know where you're going to find me.
So I know, here's the strange thing about my life, because I travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know where I'll be every day from middle of September until the end of May.
Right, we're calling games in the World Juniors and the World Championships, all that kind of stuff.
I know which cities I'll be in.
Yeah, including Toronto, you're saying, like when you're going to be home.
But I know I'll be in LA here, I'll be in, I'll be Dallas there, I'll be in Washington there. Like I know exactly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you're fine then. You know when you need to be flexible, when you don't need to be flexible, when you're going to be on.
I have to be flexible in the summer because you keep changing your mind.
Right, exactly. I do that a lot. Things pop up. There's things you got to get to.
What came up tomorrow?
Nothing really tomorrow. To be honest, tomorrow's not. There's really no reason for it. Maybe it's the start of the Olympic Games. Maybe I want to be home for that, the opening ceremony. And Doogie said that Celine Dion's going to be over
Apparently,
there.
yeah.
Which, should I be surprised by that? She's not French. Like, she's not from France. I know she's French-Canadian. But why, like, wouldn't there be someone from France that would be kind of running the show over there? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like an opening ceremony, generally when it's in the States, I guarantee you it will be Americans. They won't be having someone from France come over and do something. When it's in Canada, if I can recall correctly, in 2010, I think it was all Canadians that would have been doing it.
Katie Lang and
like why, it's a great honor, and obviously Celine Dion is an international superstar. I think Lady Gaga's a part of it too.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, that's
you're up on this.
Well, Doogie's up on it.
I'm not a big guy. I got to
me.
be honest, the opening ceremony,
not your thing?
Not my thing. I'm going to be brutally honest. It's not my thing.
I find it, I think it's usually really cool to see countries, to see, it's like a fashion show in a way. Like, what are the colors? What are they wearing? What are you wearing? I'm wearing Lululemon, actually.
I'm wearing a golf shirt.
I'm wearing a golf shirt, whatever it is.
Which I wear every day on this show.
But I always find it kind of fascinating when you see certain countries that come out and they have, like, very few athletes, and you just feel kind of great about those athletes that they made it there. You get whatever country it is, and it's, hey, they got 15 athletes. Then you get, like Canada, the U.S., China, Britain, and it's like, Great Britain or whatever. There's 400 athletes or whatever.
Whenever I hear people mocking, we finished 40th in this. Well, that person's one of the 40 best in the world at what they do.
Yeah.
Are you 40th best in the world at what you do? I mean, until you are, you probably shouldn't be throwing stones.
Yeah, and how could you possibly really?
Well, you probably are.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
I don't know if I'm in the top 4. Top 50,
Top
I'd
50
say.
for sure.
I'll take top 50. I think, again, Doogie was saying.
Doogie was working it.
Yeah, Doogie loves the Olympic Games. 6.5 gold medals for Canada. Would you bet over or under?
Go over.
You go over 6.5?
Yeah.
Like winter games were a lock for double digits, generally speaking.
Canada actually does punch above its weight.
At the summer games, too.
Well, overall, given our size.
Well, there's a lot of people in this country.
Right, but given our size, no one punches above their weight like Norway.
Specifically in the winter with skiing, isn't it?
Cross-country skiing.
Yeah.
Yeah, biathlon.
Because there's only like 4.5 million people, 5 million people there, if that.
Yeah, they're very good.
That's like when Iceland does something. Like Iceland, didn't they get into the World Cup or the Euros?
Euros.
Yeah, they were in the Euros. It's like 800,000 people in that. Less than that, I think.
So, it is interesting.
I'll go over, too.
I'll glance at it. I just don't.
You'll glance at the opening ceremony?
It gets long for me.
Well, of course. You have to include every single country.
A lot of speeches.
Yeah, and they get the torch in there, which is big. Like, it's big for the host country.
I'll watch the highlights of the Sports Center.
All right. It sounds like Zidane may be maybe the guy that ends up
Lights the torch?
lighting the torch.
Well,
That seems pretty good. I mean, I think
Was he
he's
an Olympian?
generally considered the greatest
Was he an
soccer
Olympian?
player in French history.
because Ali was an Olympian, right? I mean, that's. I mean, there's sort of a.
I don't know if Zidane actually
I don't think he did.
competed in the Olympic Games. I'm not sure. But you talk about like a famous athlete that represents France, it would probably be him,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it doesn't get much better than that
No.
in terms of the way he played and the way he performed and how much he won. But yeah, the Olympic Games, it's kind of funny how it like starts before the opening ceremony,
It has.
because you have to with team events.
Yeah, so soccer, rugby, I think a couple others, yeah. And
Yep.
I remember going to a soccer game in Australia 2 days before. I went down to Melbourne 2 days before the opening ceremony.
Well, today Canada beat New Zealand 2-1. And Bev Priestman was not out there. She'll return now for the forthcoming matches. But Canada on the women's side off to a pretty good start in the opening ceremony tomorrow. And you can see a lot of Andi Petrillo over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
A lot.
What's Andi going to wear?
Andi crushes it. Well, I would guess her clothing budget has got to be outrageous
It's
for
unlimited.
the next 2 weeks.
It's unlimited, and she goes over it.
She should. Here's Andi Petrillo. What's the answer on that, Andi? What's the clothing budget for you over the next 2 weeks?
I cannot confirm or deny over under 10,000.
Yeah, I love it.
Love it.
Could be. How exciting is this? I mean, I know you. I remember talking to you about this. I mean, you've been a huge part of the Olympic Games for a long time, but feels like whenever I see you, it's like, yeah, the Olympics are in 6 months, in 4 months, or in 2 months, and it's finally here.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, obviously every 2 years, and during the COVID games, those were 6 months apart because of just a messed up sports calendar. And here we go. We're back on a normal sports calendar. But you're right. It always feels like you're working towards the Olympics, which is really exciting. And what's great is obviously, I get to follow these athletes in the in-between years. I know a lot of people love to tune in during the Olympic Games and love to have them. But, these athletes are going in the in-between years, competing on their circuits and everything, and just continuing to prepare for the game. So it's nice to be able to just see also everything they've worked for and worked towards now just kind of come to fruition. And here we go. And yeah, when you talk about it for so long, we've been rehearsing, we've been in studio for so long. I'm like, drop the puck. I'm done now. Like, let's get these games going.
And Andy, the opening ceremony is going to be a little different this time around, right? Like it's going to be a little bit of a different look.
Yeah. People are going to be wearing some life jackets probably. You know what? It's all really amazing, and it sounds like it's going to happen, which is for the first time ever, they're not in a stadium. They are out in the open. They are on the River Seine, and even the performances, the speeches, like everything is happening simultaneously. You've watched the ceremony, opening, closing. You know that there is a rhythm to it, right? You have your athletes and you have your speeches, and then you have this performance and that performance. It is a format, and you follow it. This is all happening at once. And as the athletes are going down this 6-kilometer course is essentially what it is along the River Seine, they're coming across what they're going to put up are called 12 tableaus. And these 12 tableaus all represent different eras of France. So this is how they're going to showcase the host city to the world, but they're doing it as the boats are going by. So, I mean, the cameras alone, guys, there are just like hundreds of cameras around the River Seine. They have boats on the water that are strictly for camera operators. They have cameras on the actual, I don't even know, barges of what the athletes are onto. There's about 85 boats that are representing countries alone. So everything is happening all at once. And the artistic director, this young guy, Thomas Joly, is exactly what he wanted it to be. A little bit of decolonization is what he called it, a little bit of chaos and things kind of happening all at once. But I'm looking at that going, no rain, please. Nobody put a hole in one of those boats, and everyone please have your life jackets. And I really hope there's more than one bathroom on those barges.
and by the way, if it's anything like Albertville was in '92, that was a festival of weirdness.
Mm-hmm.
That was avant-garde to an extreme.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Albertville in '92 was like a very strange trip.
I need like a boat malfunction, just one.
Come on.
Yeah, I want one just
Why?
for content. That's what I'm looking for. I want one guy to fall asleep at the wheel. Something happens with a boat. That's what I want. Do you know if Team Canada supplied them with any drones, Andi, to use during the opening ceremony?
I was waiting for that one. What a bizarre story.
Yeah.
What a bizarre story. It's, I mean, yeah, we're going to sit here, we'll joke about it, but obviously they're mortified, as they should be, because, and I know a lot of people have said this, and quite frankly, I've said it too, right? Like, we all know in the pro game, who are you trying to kid? Cheating happens. Bill Belichick, hello, Deflategate. Like, we all know about the footballs, and we all know about stealing signs. We also know about that in baseball. In soccer, just about everyone, like every pro team, it's very common for them to use drones in practice to get the aerial view. They actually use them for themselves. And let's not kid anybody. Sometimes they take a little adventure, I'm pretty sure. And we know that to be the case in the pro game, even though we still frown upon it. We're like, whatever, right? But when you're at the Olympics, you're not just representing Canada soccer anymore. You're representing the Canadian delegation. You're representing all of Canada. And to do it at the Olympics is beyond idiotic. And Canada Soccer obviously is very upset. As we know, there's been massive turnover there. They have new leadership. Their new general secretary, Kevin Blue, means business. He was mortified by this, which is why, even though things might just be the way they are now at the games, as in Bev just missing this one, the IOC may just be happy with whatever, the dismissal of those other two assistant coaches. Canada Soccer's not. They're launching their own independent investigation because they want to see how far this goes. How long has this been happening? We know back in 2021, during World Cup qualifying, Honduras accused John Herdman and the Canadians of that because they had a drone flying over their practice. Herdman never denied it. He gave a very cheeky response. So Canada Soccer right now, under new leadership, is going, okay, let's pump the brakes. Let's look into this, because this cannot be our reputation. This cannot be what we stand for, and cannot be what we represent moving forward. So, I mean, while it may be done like the quote-unquote punishment at the Olympics by the COC and everything, I don't necessarily think it's done, guys, after the Olympics for Bev Priestman.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this will likely continue. And I think the pressure's on Bev Priestman to make sure that they medal now. It may be irrelevant, but if they perform poorly, and they won this morning or this afternoon, but if they perform poorly, that opens the door for an easy dismissal.
Right.
Then you can claim, well, you didn't meet expectations, and on top of it, it was embarrassing in terms of the drone gate scenario and all that. So that door's open. But in terms of positivity, we're chatting with Andi Petrillo, opening ceremony tomorrow. Summer McIntosh is the name that I find most Canadians are buzzing about the most, in terms of uber performances and chasing gold. And not that there aren't other athletes that legitimately are chasing that, but it appears to me that Summer's kind of the face of the Canadian Olympic athlete. Do you see it the same way as you prepare for the games?
100%. We're all calling it the summer of summer, and it's because of her, not because it's Captain Obvious. It's summertime. No, we're talking about Summer McIntosh. And we even were there was a buzz around her even in Tokyo when she was 15 years old. Obviously, she didn't get on the podium there. She did have a fourth place finish. And I remember Byron McDonald, who's our main analyst in swimming, longtime coach of Kylie Moss as well, who's a world champion in the 100-meter backstroke and also Olympic medalist in that. He's like, watch out for Summer McIntosh. He's like, Penny Oleksiak is phenomenal. She came out of nowhere. He's like, Summer's not really catching anyone off guard. She's been on people's radar for a very long time. And he's like, 15 here at the games, kind of thrown in. He's like, but, Paris will be her games. And the in-between years, she is a 5-time world champion. She holds multiple, I've lost count, national records. She also, at one point, held multiple world records. Now she holds one. It's in the 400 IM. And she's gone head-to-head already with Katie Ledecky, one of the world's best as well from the United States. She's beaten her. Katie Ledecky's beaten her. It's gone back and forth. And then you throw in Ariane Titmus from Australia, and you have yourself this 3-horse race for the best female swimmer at these Olympic Games. And a lot of people, because sometimes you get lost in your own bubble, right? We're Canadian, so we're like, oh, well, of course everyone's talking about the Canadian. She's got to be the best. But I've been speaking to swimmers and people who cover swimming outside of Canada, and they're like, no, you're not crazy. A lot of people are saying she has the potential to enter the Michael Phelps kind of conversation. So that's what people even outside of Canada are saying about Summer McIntosh. And you're right, Hayes, is it not a matter of multiple medals that she could be coming home with in Paris? People are expecting multiple gold medals, which is just bananas. But this is something she can do. And again, she's only 17.
Well, and Andy, you mentioned, not just the Canadians, but, Katie Ledecky, Simone Biles is there for the U.S. First time ever at the Olympics, there'll be just as many female athletes as male athletes. And that's...
Yeah.
And you get the sense that this might be the summer of women starring at the Olympics as much as men.
Yeah, this is the first time we've actually reached that gender equality as far as delegations. It is literally 50-50 when it comes to all of the delegations, and you look at the participation, men and women. It is right down the middle at 50%. And I believe Canada, if I'm not mistaken, Canada's team is 61% women. And this has been a goal of the IOC for many years now. And that's why we've seen the inclusion, not just of women's sports, like women's sports and disciplines being added where they haven't been before, which I also just think is ridiculous. So, it's about time. But we're also seeing the addition of a lot of mixed team events, because that's another way of getting women involved in certain sports. And also countries who typically will just, choose male athletes. Well, if you include a mixed team event, well, it's kind of encouraging them now to, get female athletes involved, because you have the chance to participate in this other event and a chance at another medal. So when you also have mixed team events, you see the participation rise as well on the women's side, which, by the way, I'm a huge athletics fan. That's what I always get really excited for at the Summer Olympics. And, they've also introduced the mixed relay, which is so crazy, because it's not like you're told the man has to start, then it's a woman, then it's a man, then it's a woman. You can line up whoever you want. You can have 3, women run and then one man. It's like so crazy how they do it. And it leads to these incredible finishes and incredible takeovers and, all these lead changes, which is, so it's also 4x400 is what I should say. So they have to go run the entire track. But this is exactly what the IOC wanted to do. They wanted to see it, and they're achieving it. So you know what? Kudos to them. Obviously, this is something they set out to do, and it's working.
In terms of the track and field, and on the men's side, Andre DeGrasse, Damian Warner, both of them had obviously spectacular runs in Tokyo. Andre DeGrasse, the most decorated male summer Olympian in Canadian history. They're both back, looking to defend Olympic titles. They're older though. It's only a few years. But what are you hearing on the status of DeGrasse, Warner, and the chances of them possibly pursuing a medal again?
Andre DeGrasse is a tricky one, because I've learned not to count him out. He peaks at the right time all the time. Just when you're like, this guy's in horrible shape. He hasn't run a sub 10 or sub 20, and then suddenly he does it at the Olympics or World Championships. But you're right, he is older. And I think that's a lot to expect of him. At the 6 events total that he's competed in between Rio and Tokyo, he has 6 medals. But he has really slowed down. Like even at the last year's World Championships in Budapest, he didn't qualify for the 100 meter through the Canadian track channels, and he just didn't run the time that would have allowed him to do it. Did run in the 200, that didn't go well. Didn't medal there, and there was a little bit of controversy because he saved himself for the 200 and sacrificed racing in the 4x100 relay. The men were the defending champions. They didn't make it out of their semifinal without him, so that was a little bit of a bee in everyone's bonnet. And he just recently ran sub 20 in the 200, in which he's the reigning Olympic champion. So we'll see, because he's got to go up against Noah Lyles. The American is bold, the American is brash, but he backs it up. He joined elite company at last year's World Championships when he won the triple. He won the 100, 200, and the 4x100. I mean, you're talking Usain Bolt territory, right? So the American Noah Lyles is a 2-time world champion in the 200 meter as well. He's hungry. I don't know if you guys saw that documentary on Netflix called Sprint. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It is I love sprinters, because they're just and I say this with so much love in my heart, they're just jerks. And I love it so much, because it's just a bunch of alpha dogs walking around. Yeah. And he's incredible. But Damian, he's been in top shape for a long time. And he was really disappointed at last year's Worlds when he didn't get the title. That's the one thing that eluded him. Fellow Canadian Pierce Lepage won it. Unfortunately, he's out with a herniated disc. So, Damian's just been a man on a mission ever since Budapest last year. And it's for him, he's getting better with age, which is also crazy. Mm-hmm. So I would have, if I'm betting on who's going to get a medal, I would say Damian over Andre, but I've also been bitten in the you-know-what when I've counted Andre out. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess it starts tomorrow, the opening ceremony, which is going to be incredible. And Andi, it's always great catching up with you. I know it's a busy time of year for you and a busy day today, and it will only get busier the next couple of weeks, but we'll be watching, and we always appreciate you finding some time for us. Thank you for this.
Anytime. Love you guys. Bye.
You got it, Andi Petrillo. Yeah, Andi will be doing her thing, right? Where you got CBC, TSN, Sportsnet, everyone's kind of pulling together here, right, to get things done here for the Olympic Games. It's going to be a fun 2 weeks.
It's unlike, I mean, I've been lucky to see some amazing things in sports, and both in London in 2012 and in Rio in 2016, when Usain Bolt walks into the track and field stadium, the athletic stadium, it is unlike anything you've ever. There's just because in athletics, there's so much going on at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff on the track, the throwing events, the field events, the jumping events. There's all this stuff going on, but when he walks in, you could just. I remember in London, out of the corner of my eye, you could just see flash bulbs starting to go from phone cameers, and then it just.
It's like a big fight, like an entrance of
it's like
heavyweight.
It's like
champion.
the entrance of a heavyweight body. Like he was like the most famous athlete in the world and the best athlete in the world.
Right. It was basically a foregone conclusion. Like this guy's going to win, but will he run 9.58 like he did? Will he smash records?
And he's just such a commanding presence. It's really.
Well, with the bow,
like he
just, and everything.
Because as Andi said,
unreal.
They get it, right?
He's a showman.
He was so tall, intimidated everyone, and watching him run, like the 200 is more impressive because when you watch him make the turn and just come flying out of it, like he was just.
It's incredible, and there's a great video out there, the 4x100 meter, where the baton gets passed to him, and he's in lockstep with whoever is right. But even his teammate throws his hands up because they're like, he's just going to blow past this guy.
It's just
it's like a premature celebration, but unless he was going to fall, there was no way he wasn't going to win.
Yeah, it's just, it really is. What's interesting about the Olympics is that it is sports, and Andi points this out, that people don't follow these athletes when it's non-Olympic years. It's a lot of sports that most people don't watch. Now, tennis, golf, but people don't watch swimming much when it's not the Olympics. They don't watch athletics when it's not the Olympics. They don't watch a lot of these sports.
Also, just don't participate in them either growing up. Like shot put, javelin, some kids do. Like if you're growing up in elementary school, high school, maybe you're an athlete, maybe you do test some things out. But I would guess, like you said, like within the stadium, there's so much going on. When they get into position to run the 100, everyone else has to be stopping.
Oh, yeah.
Like there can't be a guy who's about to throw a shot put and he's like, I don't care if Bolt's about to win this thing. I'm doing my thing. It's like everyone else move aside, be quiet for a second, let them run. It'll be over in 10 seconds, and then you can continue with whatever you're doing.
But there is, and then something else happens, and you got to pay attention. So when Bolt crosses the line, there is a time limit to get some of these things done. And so, there's the famous story about Mexico City in 1968. Tommy Smith and John Carlos, the 200-meter runners who had the famous Black Power salute, their race happened, and as soon as it was over, there was this great roar went up at the stadium. Bob Beamon broke the world long jump record by 8 inches. He reeled off a 29.5 foot jump, and it was they're looking around what's going on?
Right after one of the more famous victories and
they hadn't
reactions.
They hadn't had the medal ceremony yet, but there was all of a sudden this big, right? And that happens in athletics all the time where, there'll be now, especially what happens during the longer runs, obviously, like the 5,000 meter, the 10,000 meter, the 1,500, the metric mile, things are going on while that's going on.
Of course. You can't sit there and wait for these guys. Half of them are outside of the stadium.
The high jumps going on.
You bring up a good question with Bolt and what he represented. If you could get into a time machine and go watch one athlete in his prime, his or her prime, which one would it be? Who would you go back and see to be able to tell people, I saw that? Bolt would probably be someone that people would choose.
I'll honestly say, I called Gretzky playing hockey. I called Bolt running. That's, I saw Sinatra sing. I mean, that's, those.
But you think Ali coming, Ali Frazier
I think Ali in his prime would be one. Jesse Owens. I would love to have,
I mean, that's going way back. That's.
Well, you said a time machine. You didn't say it.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah. I guess you could go back to the Roman Empire if you want. Gladiator.
I think Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Joe Louis. I mean, there's so many. I always think, I don't know why I think fighters like back in the day, it just felt
I think
like seeing Ali fight, I think would be.
I think Ali, I remember watching Ali on TV. I remember we watched.
Being in the building, though, to see him fight, just be incredible.
I saw Ali walk down the street in New York one time, and it stopped. Fifth Avenue in New York just stopped. Like cab drivers literally stopped their cab, got out, and it was, I saw Pele walk down the street in Paris at the World Cup in '98. We interviewed him. I didn't, but our crew interviewed him, and he came walking out, and the Champs-Élysées stopped.
Yeah, that'd be a good one too. Pele back in the day.
Pele back in the day, for sure.
Maradona back in the day.
I saw Maradona play at the end of his career, and he was still a rock star.
Sure.
I mean, he was still. But yeah, I think Jesse Owens in Berlin would be something to.
Right, because of the historical significance of what he represented. Who else was I believe, was in the building at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that would be pretty staggering. And I'm sure there's a number of those type of examples. Like even the Miracle on Ice, like being in the building to see the Americans win that game would be incredibly cool.
So amazing story about that is that that was tape delayed in the United States. That game was not shown live. It was played in the
it was in Lake Placid.
It was in Lake Placid, but it was played in the afternoon.
Okay.
And so it was. I think it was played at 3:00. A guy I know was at the game and was driving back to Montreal after the game, and he stopped in like a truck stop to get dinner on his way back, and all these guys are watching the first period. And he's like, "Do you want to know who wins?" I mean, this is 1980, right?
You're right. There's social media, nothing online, and newspapers aren't pumping out.
Yeah, he's like, "Do you want to know who wins? Because it's pretty good."
Mm-hmm. Was that Michael Farber?
No, my former father-in-law.
Oh, okay. Thought it was Farber. Could have been. He would have been probably at that game. I'm sure he was.
He's still a good friend, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Didn't mean to spark any.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Sorry about that. I don't know why I was trying to be a hero. I just felt Farber was the guy there. Although I figured you'd probably say, should have known if it was Farber, you probably would have said it was Farber. You probably would have written that in a book or something.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Farber probably did the same thing. I'd be shocked. He had to be in that building. I'm guessing he would have been in that building.
Probably, yeah.
And he probably would have been on his way back to Montreal. All right. Thanks again to Andi Petrillo. We appreciate that. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel. Still to come later in the hour. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. Week 8 in the CFL. Alouettes laying 3.5 at home against the Rough Riders tonight. Big game. Mm-hmm. Top team in the East, top team in the West.
2 5-1 teams. There you go.
2 5-1 teams going at it tonight. So we're talking about broadcasts earlier this afternoon. Broadcasting good teams, bad teams. You know, the Jays today got crushed. Ernie Clement had to close out the game for the Jays. That's how bad it was. And John Schneider comes out and he's talking about the bullpen having to be better. They didn't score any runs. How about score some runs?
2 hits?
Yeah, exactly. Like the bullpen's irrelevant if you're not going to score any runs. You know, it's kind of like what happened last year against Minnesota. And I understood the big story, and I was a driving force in that conversation as well. Barrios to Kikuchi, they didn't score any runs. Yes, it was a stupid decision, obviously. They lost, I believe, 2-1. They scored 1 run. They weren't going to win the game anyway. Right. Even if Barrios stayed in, they probably weren't going to win that game. But Jim Houston was on Sekeres and Price, the Sekeres and Price podcast recently, talking about his experience as the, I guess, play-by-play guy for Hockey Night and calling all those Leaf games for as many years as he did and the difficulties he had at times calling it because of what Leaf fans maybe were looking for or people in Toronto were looking for. Here's what he had to say about that.
I found that as a broadcaster, and everybody knew that I was a Vancouver guy and that I live in the city, local people didn't think I was a big enough fan. And the other guys thought I was too much of a fan. So it's really to win that. And same, like with I broadcast the Maple Leafs, one of the downsides of having the top chair in Hockey Night in Canada is basically become a Toronto Maple Leaf broadcaster because you're there every Saturday, whether they're good or bad. And as the years have gone by, I've noticed a real change in fandom part of it is social media, I think, but it's just the way everybody in a local fan base expects their broadcasters to be like them. They want fans. And if you're not, you must hate them. And that's the problem you get when you're broadcasting on the national level out of Toronto, is that they want a local broadcast, but at the same time, the broadcasters are broadcasting to every corner of the province. And there's, you might be broadcasting a game where the New York Islanders playing, and the young men who play for the Islanders are from all different parts of Canada as well, and their people are invested in it. So it's really a hard one to win in that sense. And now you get judged every day on social media, or every minute on social media, which has changed the aspect of broadcasting for the guys that are still doing it entirely.
Yeah, that last part I think is important. That we all, I'm guilty of this as well. We all put too much emphasis on a tweet. One person tweets in, "You hate this," and that means, oh, people are saying I hate it. No, one person said that. That doesn't mean it applies. And if you can extrapolate it to the whole society.
And if you look at their if you look at their tweets, they hate everything.
Well, that's another thing.
There are some that hate
they hate everybody and everyone.
But the interesting point that he makes early on in that is about, now the difference now is, so let's take the Leafs. 82 games in a year. 30 games are set aside for the national package. That's Saturdays, Mondays, Wednesdays. So there's 30 games. Leafs 52. TSN and Rogers split the remaining 52, 26 each. So I do the 26 games. It's Molson Leafs hockey. It's only broadcast Leaf region. I know I'm talking to Leaf fans, and I can tailor the broadcast. I'm talking to Leaf fans. The other 26 on Rogers, they're able to take some of those national if they want. And I believe last year they took 14 national. So basically 44 Leaf games are national broadcasts.
Right.
But how do you know? Like, if you don't know. I mean, a Tuesday night game on Rogers could be a national game or a regional game. You don't know.
But there's also an understanding they're doing that for the Leaf fans who are outside of the Leafs region.
They're the most popular team in Canada.
Exactly.
This makes people grind their teeth outside of Toronto. They're the most popular team in Canada by a mile. Look,
by a mile.
Look,
because there's Leaf fans all over the country, including outside of the city of Toronto.
Their seventh game against Boston, Leafs' first round, Game 7 against Boston, was the highest-rated playoff game by a mile until like Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. Like Edmonton-Vancouver, Game 7, wasn't even close.
Right.
So, I mean,
that's why they're on hockey night. But that's why they're always the prime time players.
But there's expectations now that are different, as Jim points out. Now,
I'm not sure that's true.
I think there are.
I don't think there's any difference between what a fan, quote unquote, would have been looking for in the 70s or the 80s. How do we know it's different?
They're getting a different product because now, certainly, a lot of broadcasters work for the team.
Okay, but people,
or the network is owned by the same
Leaf fans have never had that experience. Leaf fans have never had that experience.
What do you mean?
Well, do you work for the team?
No, but
does Cuthbert?
No, but Bell and Rogers own the team.
No, I understand that, but you're not like directly Maple Leaf employees.
I'm not an employee.
Like, it's a separation.
So there are guys in the league who are told at the start of the year there's no such thing as a bad call against our opponent. Question every call. Do not discuss any.
That applies to every sport too, not just hockey.
And so, like, I'll give you an example. I won't say who it was because they're still working, but there was a guy playing for a team who was going to set the record for the longest goalless drought ever. Like, he was close to it. And they were not allowed to discuss the length of the goal drought when he scored. Like, he ended this massively long, years-long goalless drought. Their broadcast was not allowed to mention it because it was a negative stat. So I don't know what the answer is. Different fans want different things. To think that all Leaf fans want one thing is a mistake. Because now, but I know, I have the luxury of knowing that when I do a Leaf game, I'm talking to Leaf fans. The problem was when I broadcast national games in Canada and the U.S. for NBC, is you would go into a market, and I'll give an example, Boston. Right? You do a Bruins game on NBC, and Jack Edwards has been, doing his thing, where Jack was an unabashed homer for the Bruins, over the top in a lot of ways, and Bruins fans hear a different voice and think you hate their team.
Yeah, that has always been the case. That if you're not a fan, that means you hate is completely bogus.
When in fact, you have no skin in the game.
No affiliation whatsoever.
You don't care. And so, but Chicago could be like that, different places. And we talked about it in the last hour. Like, when the visiting team scores, it's like, oh, they score. You know,
I think the difference again with hockey night is that it's always the Leafs.
Right.
Like Leaf fans naturally look at that as that's their product.
And why can't we
has built it to be what it is the Maple Leafs and the fans that tune in to watch them. That's why they play. Where, you know, you look at like the NFL package, Sunday Night Football. It's a different team every week.
And there's no regional broadcast.
There's no regional broadcast.
Except for radio.
Yes. But again, it's one week it's, hey, we're in Green Bay, Packers, Bears. Then the next week we're in LA to see the Rams play the Chiefs.
Yeah.
That's not the case with hockey night. So naturally, Leaf fans have attached themselves to that, saying, I understand it's national, but it's the same team. And so if you changed it, then you could use that case, that argument that, hey, whoever's playing, it doesn't really matter to us. But it's not really true because hockey night historically has always understood the power and how lucrative it is to play the Leafs. And to make sure that the Leafs are playing because people are going to tune in. Case in point, Leaf fans being the ones that would do that.
And Leaf fans, I think some would say, why can't we have a Homer? Why can't we have Jack Edwards? Why can't we have the late Rick Jenrette? Why can't we have...
It's interesting because that's all that Leaf fans have really known in terms of the TV broadcast. Now, Joe Bonesy's a full-blown Leaf fan. He loves the Maple Leafs.
He did TV.
Yes, Rogers, he did. Yeah. He loves them. And I don't know. I've always felt that like the Leafs, because they're such a public brand, you know, it's kind of like the Cowboys. It's kind of like the Yankees.
Wow.
That it's like you don't have to cater because fans are going to be there anyway. Well, if that makes sense.
The Leafs are the perfect storm of in TV and hockey, like the Yankees, like the Cowboys, because their fan base loves them, right? Half the country loves them. Like you go to a Leaf game. I do Leaf games in Edmonton, Calgary. You know, it's packed with Leaf fans, but the other half hates them.
Right, hate watching is a real thing.
So they're one of the few teams. Like when the Cowboys are getting blown out by the Bears, like 44 to nothing.
Amazing, you got to watch it.
The TV ratings went up.
Yeah,
because hey, the Cowboys are getting blown out. So they're the perfect storm in that case because half the audience really wants them to win. The other half really wants them to lose. And not many people are sort of meh.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And listen, I think there's a balance that generally I've always experienced and I've always heard. You know, whatever the broadcast team is, in terms of being energetic, being professional, I think that's actually where Leaf fans have been very lucky is they get usually the best of the best and like the A team, quote unquote, in terms of calling games. And that's a great benefit to Leaf fans, that generally speaking, you're going to get a very good call. Whether you interpret it one way or the other is your individual decision. But I think Leaf fans are very well served in terms of the coverage they get.
And I think Bob Cole did a great job for a long time.
Yeah, but Bob always felt like he was kind of rooting for the Leafs.
Well, except Bob was a Montreal fan.
Sure, but Bob didn't feel that way when he was calling a Montreal
fan. But when he did games involving two Canadian teams, I think he was equally invested in both. And if Ottawa fans thought he was in favor of Toronto and Toronto fans thought he was leaning too much towards Ottawa, he probably did a good job.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably the example that you're looking for.
Yeah, you can't. But it is an interesting sort of, I mean, now doing Leaf games, I know my audience. Now, I do like to tell people a little bit about the other team's players and just to make it more interesting.
Which again, I think is...
Yeah.
It's the entertainment business. I think you have to have that.
This is why this team is interesting because this guy or this guy's got an interesting story, whatever. But yeah, I think there is a luxury in doing that. But I've done both, and it can be. Now, the one thing I would say to young broadcasters is you cannot let social media dictate how you
exactly.
You
it's the worst thing you can do.
Because no matter
it's impossible to get away from. It is impossible.
There is no broadcaster out there who hasn't been criticized by thousands of people
all the time.
There isn't. So you got to do what. You got to do your best. And if it's over the top, you know, whatever, then do it. If that's who you really are, then do it. Don't be inauthentic. Like, don't pretend. But do what you think is right. Do the job you think is right and be honest to that. And it should be fine. And, Mike Johnson grew up in Toronto, signed with the Leafs out of college, played for the Leafs. He's got a passion for them. And it shows. It shows. Like, you know, I mean, Austin Matthews scored an unbelievable goal this year. And you could hear Mike, like, he was excited.
Right. Yeah, well, it's authentic. I mean, that's what
there's
really
nothing
sells.
wrong with that. And I think even on a national broadcast, you can be excited about a skillful play.
Well, the interesting thing about that, though, is if there's a person on a national broadcast that hates a team, they can't be authentic because they can't show that. You can only really show I'm authentically optimistic or positive about this team. Meanwhile, I know Leafs are an example. There have been some people over time that have called games or whatever. Like, I know the history, and I don't like it.
Well, I will tell you this. I do think the trap you can fall into as a national broadcaster, especially if you're not from here or don't live here, is you bend over so far to try to be objective, you actually go the other way.
Right.
Like you're so fearful of saying anything good about the Leafs because you're afraid that the other fans are going to call you a homer or, it's the Toronto Sports Network and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And if you really want to make money, by the way, be the Toronto Sports Network. You'd make a lot.
It's a pretty big city in this country.
Disproportionately large. Like 1 in 6 people in Canada lives in the
Southern Ontario.
Yeah. So, but I do think there's a danger, and I would say early in my career I fell into that. Being a guy from Alberta, where you calling national games, you would try so hard to be down the middle, you probably went too far the other way. And I think that's a trap that some national broadcasters fall into. And I think that's because,
that's what you would get online is people saying all you do is do this. All it is Leafs. Look at you, Leafs, Leafs, Leafs.
Well, look at our website. Like they're not stupid. Leaf articles get more clicks than anyone else by a mile.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like Yankees, Cowboys, Leafs, like the powerhouse teams, the polarizing teams.
Imagine if New York
attract the most.
Imagine if 1 in 6 Americans lived in the New York area. That's what Canada is.
That's not far off. It's like 30 million people in the greater New York area.
Right. But it's a country of 350 million people. Right. So in Canada,
1 in 10.
Yeah. So here it's like 1 in 6. And so I love doing Leaf games. I love the passion of Leaf fans. They can be, like I said earlier, that half of them want you to be harder on them, half of them want you to be easier on them. And you're never going to make everyone happy.
Well, and ultimately they play the games. That's always been my stance on it.
That's very true. Yep.
I give my opinion on things, and I'm very open, very honest. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, but they play. And if they win every single night, then it's going to be a tire pumping session every single day on the show. If they lose every night, it'll be the complete opposite. Like, they control what the mood of the show is going to be.
Right.
And what the content's going to be. It's not me. Like, people will yell. I'll get tweets all the time. You're hammering the Leafs. I'm like, they haven't won a cup in my lifetime. They haven't been to a cup final since '67. They've won one playoff run in 20 years. They play. Go talk to them. They win. They win games. They win cups. Guess what we're going to be talking about? And there's always been, and that's another thing that has always been a misnomer, that it's better if it's a circus. It's not. No. Like in the moment, there's a lot to go at, and there's a lot of energy that can come out of it. But it's always better for everyone if they're playing well and they're winning.
The ratings are better when they win.
It's always better for everybody involved, talking about everything. But no one gets to control that but the team. They're the ones that will figure that out.
Don't think for a second that network executives don't want the Leafs to do well.
But again, they can't control anything.
They don't play.
That's the best thing, like conspiracy theories. The league's always, they're boosting the Leafs. Yeah, the Leafs are really getting they're getting an upper hand by the league.
They've been New York.
Yeah.
The Rangers they've won the cup once in the last 80 years.
Whatever it is, exactly. Yeah. And the Leafs haven't won anything in over 50.
If they are cooking it, it's a bad,
horrible
they're
job.
Bad chefs.
Horrible. All right, Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel. We'll get to that and wrap up a busy afternoon. We'll do that next. All right, today's Best Bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app.
Freezing in here, by the way. Oh.
Yeah, it just got really, really cold. I'm on the Alouettes tonight. I'm going to lay the points, 3.5 points at home. Yes. Both very good teams. Quarterback issues on both sides.
Love home dogs.
Yes. I love that stadium, too. It's a great park in Montreal.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Unbelievable park in Montreal. I'm on the Owls tonight, laying the points. Both teams really good. It's going to be a great game on TSN tonight, but I'll lay the points with the home favorite, Alouettes. Kind of feels like they're going to run away with the East. Probably should. The Grey Cup champs, right? Pretty good team. So I'll lay the points. There you go, 3.5 tonight. Today's Best Bets, powered by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today and find thousands of ways to play. Please play responsibly. Must be 19 plus. Physically located in Ontario.
Which we are.
We're both 19 plus and both physically located in Ontario. Yes. So that's very convenient for us.
I'm 19 times. Yeah, whatever.
Olympic games starting tomorrow. Opening ceremony.
There you go.
Celine Dion, she's out there in Paris.
There you go, man.
Yeah, causing a scene, I guess, like wherever she goes.
She's famous.
She's very famous.
Yeah. So, and I'll be hosting for you tomorrow.
Yes.
With
You and Frankie will be in here?
So once again, I will try to take the show tomorrow and hand it off to you on Monday.
Well, I won't be here on Monday either. So.
Okay. On whatever day.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah,
you are coming back at some point.
I will be back. Yes, I will be back. After next week, I'll be back.
I'm going to Paris after this. Then I'll be back.
I'll see you on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. You and Frankie will be in here. Love it. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. Gord and Frankie will be back tomorrow at
4:00. We'll chat.
They'll chat then.
We'll chat then.